You know, whenever you look up the biggest apps today, they've all been in that position where once upon a time they were small-time startups with a niche clique, a small cult-like following and an idea. And if they made it that far, they eventually get an offer for a company to buy them out, which may sound like a steal of an opportunity on paper, but it's pretty much the biggest gamble any startup company can make. Your app could be booming with massive success, or your app could be starting out with no official launch. But once you sell your company, you are expected to either swim or sink if you can't turn that profit back in the long term. And while some of the most popular bought out apps are still swimming to this day, other apps swam for as long as they could and eventually fizzled out and sank so low that it was almost like the impossible actually happened. Now, if I were to tell you that Instagram or TikTok were going to fizzle out in a couple of years, you're most definitely thinking,
like that's ever gonna happen.
I had the exact same thought process about Vine during its heyday. Yeah, Vine. Remember that? The same app that was practically the mother that gave birth to Jake and Logan Paul and a few others. Whenever you look up Vine today, there are still people pumping out Vine content to this day. And whenever you bring TikTok into the discussion, many people seem to be in favor of Vine, even my own audience, who are not particularly big fans of the app themselves. So with all that in mind, it's hard to believe that looking back at Vine, it was one of the fastest growing apps in social media history. It's hard to believe that that same app was not only catching up to YouTube, but how the hell can an up and coming empire end up going from being the birthplace of some of the most recognizable internet personalities and memes that are still around to this day to being the equivalent of social media Rome? How did this happen? Whenever you look up the topic of Vine's downfall, you've most certainly heard these reasons before, like Vine having really bad management, or Vine getting crushed by the competition, which they're right and it does hold merit, but I feel like there's a lot more to it than that. And that the pieces of this gigantic puzzle isn't as set forward as it should be, and I think the record could be set straighter. That's what I'm here for. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the rise and fall of Vine. You've heard the basics before. 3 co-founders worked at an airline agency named Jetsetter, and one day they all had an idea.
Because all a man really needs is an idea.
Well, I'm not satisfied with that simple explanation. I want to explore a little further, starting with their education and background for context. First off, Yuz Rusupov, experienced in the background of graphic design and being an art director for several different firms. Next, Dom Hoffman, learned how to code when he was 16 years of age, eventually becoming the app's programmer, and has experience in software engineering. Finally, Colin Kroll, who started his career as a software engineer who majored in computer science. So now we established and simplified their background. There's not a lot of information out there explaining how they ended up working together at Jetsetter. Like, how did the co-founders of Vine end up meeting up? How did the tech stars align? Well, I'll tell you, but I will keep it brief. Yusupov founded a design studio named Big Human, which focuses on software and web design. Big Human's clients included Time.com, Urban Dictionary, and of course, Jetsetter. So that's one piece of the puzzle solved. Hoffman has previously worked as product manager of mobile for companies like Razorfish and of course, Jetsetter. Colin Kroll previously worked for Right Media, an online advertising company that was eventually bought out by Yahoo. He led the engineering team in Yahoo Search and Advertising Tech Group as engineering manager. Until 2011, he would then work for Jetsetter as vice president of product, until he would work his way up through the ranks of Jetsetter until he became CTO, Chief Technology Officer. And that's pretty much how fate worked its magic. Now that the crew is finally assembled, it was only a matter of time that three men with their background would start bouncing ideas off each other until they find something that clicks. Which brings us to the main event of the video. How did they come up with Vine? Back in 2012, the internet was a vastly different place, with one of the biggest stories of that year in tech being that Facebook officially bought out Instagram, another app on the rise that was smashing 50 million users at the time, for approximately around $1 billion in cash and stock. The Instagram buyout was all about combating their rivals, Twitter, and the now dead social network, Google+. The purpose of buying up Instagram was to take out potential rivals to Facebook's image services like Snapchat. And before Facebook bought Insta, Twitter made a $500 million inquisition offer for Insta, but Facebook was alerted to the offer and then bought Insta quicker with a better offer. Back in mid-2012, none of the popular apps that are so popular today had any video sharing features, which means there was an open market for video sharing apps to get a cut of the pie. Facebook buying Instagram meant that there was room for a new video sharing app to rise through the ranks. And oh, was there plenty. This would go on to be known as the battle to be the next Instagram for video.
Probably been hearing a lot in tech news since the purchase of Instagram for $1 billion by Facebook. Who is going to be the video version?
The first out of the many big contenders at that time was a social video app named SocialCam, which allowed users to film for as long as they want, share videos online from anywhere, and had filters just like Instagram. You could even play music in the background. By July 2012, the app surpassed 16 million downloads because the app's popularity was increased in that same year by its content being shared via Facebook, which meant there could have been a possible buyout.
I like SocialCam way better than Vidi. What the hell is a Vidi? Like, I get it, Vidi, like little video. Like 15 seconds. What the hell am I supposed to do in 15 seconds?
Oh yeah, that reminds me. The next contender next to SocialCam was Vidi. Vidi was a video app that only limited you to 15 seconds to record a video. It had Instagram-y-like filters and you could also edit. It was even getting celebrity-like endorsement from the likes of Justin Bieber, Rihanna, and so on.
Hey Rihanna Navy, thank you so much for all your support for the VMAs. I want to fly one of you to the VMAs to shoot a video with me, so head to Vidi right now, add me and MTV, and tell me why you should be the winner. Hashtag VMAs.
As far as I can tell and find, these two apps were the biggest contenders throughout that whole scene. But of course, that didn't stop other video apps getting in on the scene and trying their luck. Video apps like Keek that allowed you to film up to 36 seconds with no filters. However, it was considered a rip-off of Vidi for its timestamp gimmick.
What up, Vidi? We're back. Got Dwayne, got your boy Justin. And I'm here to comment on that Keek shit. What the fuck is Keek? Get that shit out of here. We're bootleg trying to be like Vidi.
So it's safe to say, out of all the competition competing to be the Instagram for video, SocialCam and Vidi were the biggest contenders for that time.
Vidi and SocialCam are the Instagrams of video. And if I hear anybody say the Instagram of again, I'm going to punch them.
Alright, calm down. Community guidelines, you know what I mean?
Okay, who would like to be the next Instagram and get purchased for $1 billion?
Now you're probably thinking I'm forgetting something. What's this got to do with Vine? Well, while all this battle for Instagram video shit was going on, Vine was studying the competition from the sidelines and were already making their move.
As with sonar, the big problem with detection is interpolating the returning signals.
Throughout the rest of 2012, Vine was in its experimental stage, where the co-founders were bouncing ideas off one another to come up with the app itself, while on the other hand, they have to consider standing out. One of the first inspirations for the creation of Vine was one of the co-founders eating a piece of chocolate and making a stop-motion video out of it.
When we started building Vine, I would experiment with creating little videos with objects on my desk. I remember creating a stop-motion video of myself eating a piece of chocolate. That's where it all began.
Dom Hoffman in particular said that they created Vine for fun and as a joke, which is interesting to say the least, but make of that of what you will. But since they were already heading into the direction of creating an app to host videos, the most fundamental thing that Socialcam, Vidi, and even the #1 video hosting site in the world, YouTube, were doing was providing the service to simply share video. Now, I don't know much about creating a video hosting app, but what I do know is that video sharing is the ecosystem for any video hosting site. Someone shares a video hosted on your site gets traffic and watch time, and not just videos, images as well. The co-founders of Vine knew the importance of being able to share content by noticing how much their small group of testers really wanted to share whatever video they made or video online with one another. And basically, they realized all they had to do was just give them what they wanted. But it wasn't as simple as just giving them what they wanted. They weren't going anywhere until they went through some development hell first. One of the first issues the team faced with was being able to share the video itself. The video files were simply far too large for Vine's beta to be able to share around. With video storage being a massive hurdle, this was going to be a massive problem for their original idea, which was being able to film a video for unlimited time. Uploading or downloading a video file in general takes time, especially if it was going to be on a phone. And having URL links from different sites was never the original vision of the app. So the only way they were going to send video without overwhelming the app with video file space was to put a time limit on the video's length. At that time, their competition only went as far as having a 15-second time limit or more. So after much discussion debating whether or not the video length should be 5 seconds or 10 seconds, they finally settled for 6.5 seconds, letting people shoot for half a second more if they need to. As restricting as 6 seconds is, despite their competition doing it for much longer, the shorter the video, the faster people can share and view it. But the gloom and worry over their heads is that some people couldn't even tolerate the 15-second video gimmick.
15 seconds? What the hell am I supposed to do in 15 seconds? What am I supposed to say?
So how are they going to convince people to put up with 6 seconds?
The very first version of Vine that we had on our phones launched right into the camera, and you could create a video. When you got to the end of 6 seconds, the app would crash.
It almost seems like they were back at square one with yet another hurdle to push through. That wasn't until they came up with one of the most crafty, revolutionary ideas, which not only apps today take for granted, but changed the world of video sharing services forever. Looping. Looping allowed the video to automatically play and became one of Vine's most famous features. Looping would complement the video length without feeling spammy or anticlimactic. The video would just loop over and over again without you doing anything. The third and final definiting feature was its user interface that gave you the ability to record video by just holding the screen and letting go to stop without the use of any button icons. Pretty common now, but back 7 or 8 years ago, this was a pretty unheard of and unique idea, because most of the video apps during that era would have like touchscreen buttons to play or pause a video, or in their words, something that would imitate a dusty old video camera. Now I love me some old 80s 90s video aesthetic, because to me there's something magical about it. Corny as that may sound, mind you, but the aesthetic that Vine was aiming for was to look new and not look outdated.
You won't see blinking red light or time codes or timeline scrubbers.
So everything was now assembled and ready to go. All they had to do was pitch their app to anyone willing to buy it out, with the most famous case being Twitter. Twitter was under competitive pressure from Facebook buying Instagram. And Twitter did not have a video feature back then. All it had was a limitation for 140 characters to post a tweet. But they figured the 6-second clips from Vine would complement the amount of characters they have limited. On October 2012, Twitter officially bought out Vine for $30 million. So with preparations met and a release date set, they were ready to throw their hat in the ring. Let's go get 'em. When Vine launched on the App Store for ISO devices in the beginning of January 2013, within the first few days, the buyout between Twitter and Vine began to pay off big time. Within the first few days on the App Store, Vine accumulated over 100,000 downloads. Then by March, downloads would reach to over 700,000. Then within another month, it grew over to 2 million. And it just kept on snowballing and climbing higher and higher and higher. During Vine's rise, news of an explosion during a marathon in Boston back in April 2013 came out of nowhere, where 6 seconds of the footage was recorded and uploaded to Twitter by people originally recording the marathon through Vine.
And finally, we have this post from Pinot, which shows Boston Marathon now trending on Vine.
With people sharing the incidents all over the world. Well, no one could have possibly predicted something like this would happen. Coverage of the incidents from news outlets all over the world would push Vine more into the mainstream. Good or bad, doesn't change the fact that Vine was just at the right place at the right time. Now I think would be a good time to talk about the relationship between Vine and Twitter during 2013. How do I explain this? It was almost like Vine and Twitter's partnership would be the perfect synchronization. Twitter had 140 characters, Vine had 6 seconds for video. Throughout Vine's growth, Twitter and Vine's partnership was like a match made in heaven, and that's clearly apparent when Vine would utilize Twitter's biggest strength, the retweet. It's like I said earlier, sharing is the most fundamental asset for any video hosting site, and Twitter's retweet is still one of the best ways to share content to this day. Vine literally had the Uno reverse to Uno, or the royal flush to poker, once Vine discovered Twitter's potential, while the rest of the competition was too focused on being the next Instagram for video. It doesn't matter how good social cam or Vidi's features were, they made a fatal mistake overlooking Twitter and underestimating their features. And the results clearly were showing when they were dominating the App Store in just a matter of months. And by year's end, over 300 million. Vine seemed like they were on top of the world, living every tech startup's dream, like having American establishments like Dunkin' Donuts, using Vine to promote their brand. It's crazy to believe that the same normal people who couldn't even tolerate the 15-second video gimmick was now being embraced and utilized by brands and celebrities, the biggest of the biggest. The same celebrities that were on Vidi were now jumping ship to Vine. Whatever fad and gimmick Vidi and apps like Vidi were attempting to do, Vine showed them how it was done. But just like any fad or trend, they come and go. But as Vine grew, there was one fad that expanded its influence. And frankly, it was one of the most amusing yet annoying fads in recent memory.
Do it for the Vine.
I ain't gonna do it.
Do it for the Vine.
I'm always gonna do it. Do it for the Vine.
Do it for the Vine was an expression used to urge someone to perform a dare on camera for a Vine video. It became a well-known catchphrase within the community after a video clip of this little girl was dancing to the chant. The video went viral all over Vine, all over social media in the beginning of 2014, and the origin from this fad came from a track named Do It for the Vine, where basically the lyrics describe making a Vine video. This fad became a meme, and I remember this being everywhere, from the insufferable Ice Bucket Challenge to Do It for the Vine. People uploaded their versions of Do It for the Vine on Vine, and a lot of it was 50-50. It was a mixed bag. What I mean by that is some were downright hilarious.
Do it for the Vine. Hell no. Do it for the Vine. Do it for the dick. I ain't gonna do it. I said do it for the Vine. I ain't gonna. What I said do it for the Vine, you do it.
Some were just tired of it.
Dad, do it for the Vine. You were supposed to say I ain't gonna do it. Ow! I ain't gonna do it. What's wrong with
some were not even funny. They were just really bad. I mean, don't even get me started. I mean, Vine was defo one of those apps with its own cesspool of just complete shite. But you know, it's to be expected. When an app gets bigger, the crap that comes along with it will get bigger. Do you know what I mean? YouTube, Facebook, Twitter has it all the time. The way I would describe Do It for the Vine, it was like an on and off switch to me. I'd watch some good ones, I'd love it. I'd stumble across some really bad ones, and these people would make me hate it all over again. Now that I think about it, now I think would be a very good time to talk about memes and how they impacted Vine. Do It for the Vine was just one of them. If I had to credit Vine for one thing, and one thing it did well, was its memes. Now usually every month or so, there's always a new meme. They come and go, and we move on to the next one for a laugh. But every now and then, Vine's memes still get referenced to this day, carrying on the legacy that gave Vine its definitive personality that everyone came to expect. Memes like this. Memes like this.
Officer, I got one question for you. What are those?
This. This.
You stupid.
They're not.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
You stupid.
And of course, this.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god.
You know what? It is kind of weird looking back at some of these. It's like a little trip down internet memory lane. While some of these memes were made by people that just became one-hit wonders, others did the exact same thing and became a Viner. Yeah, remember that term? The term to describe someone who made a name for themselves on Vine? Jesus, it's like a relic from a different time. But the business model still applies. If the users make a name for themselves on your platform, that is good for the platform. And you know your platform has done well for itself. When you have an to describe a content creator on a platform, YouTuber, Instagrammer, Viner, and people like Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Lele Pons, or whoever were described as Viners because they were exploding on the platform wherever you liked them or not. The more they got attention, the more Vine got attention. And as Vine got attention, users would get brand deals and endorsement, as rising users would attract a new audience. And throughout 2014-2016, Vine looked like they were becoming unstoppable. But just because their users and the company themselves were on top of the world, doesn't mean that they're impervious to bullet dodge concerns. If we go back to the very beginning of Vine's rise, Dom Hoffman was asked whether he was worried that Vine would become narcissistic. And his response was considerable because it had a front-facing camera which is used for selfies. But let's face it doesn't matter what social media app it is, you're always going to have cringy narcissists wherever you go. And being asked if he was worried whether Vine would make people narcissistic, it was going to happen either way. Remember the Don't Judge Me challenge? That was all over Vine back in 2015. That was the pinnacle of narcissism. In fact, it was probably the most narcissistic trend I can remember. And even talking about them has given me a headache. Like, you're not all that, you know what I mean? Get over yourself. But Vine turning narcissistic or attracting narcissists was the least of Vine's worries. In 2016, they were introducing new features that looked like it was going to elevate the platform even more. Vine extended to 140 seconds. Wow, think of the possibilities with more seconds. And near the end of 2016, all of a sudden, Vine shuts down.
This is a video that I knew I'd one day be making. I just didn't think it would come so soon. If you haven't heard, the news has just dropped that Vine, the app, in the coming months will be shut down.
But now it all comes full circle, doesn't it? Now we get to the real discussion of this video. After talking about how it grew, let's talk about how it fell. So what I didn't mention earlier about Vine's explosive growth was mentioned their other competition besides SocialCam and Vidi. The heavy hitters, Instagram and Snapchat, introducing their own video features mid-year in 2013, washing out the competition that was trying to be the next Instagram for video effortlessly. Because what would be the point of Facebook buying up some video app when Instagram could just do it itself? I mean, it makes sense from a business standpoint. Why buy up a video app when you could introduce the feature on an app you already bought? It costs buttons to do and you're not spending millions of dollars. 15 seconds was the length. With filters and editing, Snapchat would release their video sharing features with another feature where you can monetize your videos. Their video length was 10 seconds, and Snapchat was already putting the pressure on Instagram and Facebook alone, which would also put an enormous competitive stress on Vine. While it looked like they were winning in 2013, behind the scenes, they were having trouble being quicker than their competition. When Instagram introduced a feature to be able to film 15 seconds of video, Instagram courted celebrities with longer video, eventually bumping up the limit to more than 60 seconds. Vine, on the other hand, didn't even break the 6-second barrier and didn't introduce longer seconds until it was too late. Instagram was also good at bringing promotion to celebrity accounts with one of its most defining features, the Explore tab, which would bring more attention to the celebrities than Vine. Vine found it difficult to match. The same marketers and ad buyers that paid creators to make sponsored Vines are now jumping ship to platforms that do that better. During this time, Vine began to frustrate its content creators, feeling as if the app wasn't supporting their work and didn't implement a sustainable advertising model. And coincidentally, it just so happens that their competition were able to supply the frustrated demand, where the frustration was less. Vine may have been a good tool to grow your audience, but it was a terrible tool to monetize your content on it. So when they say Instagram video was the beginning of the end, that's what they mean. But as we explained, there's a hell of a lot more to it than just Instagram's involvement. There was Snapchat, there was Facebook, and one new rising challenger that I haven't forgotten about. Before TikTok, there was Musical.ly, and Musical.ly launched in 2014. Users could film 15 seconds to 1 minute videos, and the gimmick that you're all familiar with that originally gave Musical.ly its name, lip syncing over music, with speed options from slow to fast, with a few added filters and effects. This app exploded, so much so that the term muser was a thing, a term used to describe a user on Musical.ly. And like I said before, if you have an at the end of your user's name that's growing on your platform, it means the platform is a big deal. And just like the rest of the competition, Musical.ly was no different in providing better services and ad money than Vine. And as the apps kept on improving, the video length got bigger, and Vine had become increasingly outdated due to its limitations. Which is quite ironic actually, that the app that initially started out wanting to be new and wanting to stand out was being called outdated or considered obsolete obsolete. Bottom line, they weren't fast enough to keep up with the competition, and keeping up with the responsibility to keep the gears turning in order to, well, stay alive would put an enormous amount of pressure on them and would eventually make them fight among themselves. That kind of responsibility was so heavy, it led to the bad management, making history in the sense that it became one of the most infamous reasons to why Vine failed in the first place. Let me be more specific. Bad management means bad leadership. If the team falls under pressure and falls apart, the company falls apart because they couldn't figure out as a team to think of a solution with not only dealing with their competitors, but being able to, most importantly, monetize the platform. They were making money, but not enough to support themselves and their rising users, as we already stated. So just to recap, popular users went where the money went, and marketers and brands followed them there. And during that time, two of Vine's biggest players were stepping down. Dom Hoffman left the company in 2014 when Vine was at its best, still pulling numbers. And his reason for stepping down was apparently executives at the very top ranks of Twitter floated the idea of expanding the length of Vine videos. So the app would have possibly gotten way more than 6 seconds earlier, but from the sound of things, it sounds like they came to a disagreement. In that same year, Colin Kroll would be dismissed. He was the general manager between 2013 and 2014. The reason why he was fired from Twitter was due to bad management and alleged questionable behavior towards female colleagues, if you know what I mean. So with two of Vine's biggest players gone, Yusupov was the last man standing, keeping the app afloat. But he couldn't do it by himself, and they were juggling between who gets what position. So now they had to find the right people for the right job all over again. Jason Toth took over Vine as head of product between 2014 and 15, and then eventually became general manager, but eventually quit mid-year 2016, months before Vine's official shutdown. Ended up working for Google for a bit, and then ironically, director of product management for Facebook. So they hired someone else to be general manager named Hannah Donovan. And some reports say that hiring her was the beginning of the end of Vine. Vine in the beginning was sharp when it came to hiring the right people for the right job. But this time, they hired someone who lacks previous experience of running a company. Why they made such a simple mistake like that could have been out of desperation. People have said time and time again, the sole reason Vine ended was Instagram introducing its video feature and the madness that was going on in Vine's management. And while of course they hold merit to the reason why Vine fell, but if you were to ask me, I think one of the heaviest reasons Vine died was because of Twitter themselves. During Vine's shutdown, Yusupov, the last man standing for Vine, ironically tweeted, "Never sell your company," meaning that Vine served its purpose or was no longer useful or profitable anymore. And like we talked about in the beginning, selling your company is one of the biggest gambles a tech company can make. And while Vine experienced tremendous success at launch, behind the scenes, throughout Vine's lifetime, Vine and Twitter were already struggling with communication and management. In the partnership, Twitter's ideas were even being argued between Vine and the executives at Twitter, and two of its major players were no longer working at Vine due to Twitter-related reasons, and Twitter introducing features that would give Vine less of a reason to be a business model and less of a reason to exist at all. Throughout 2014 to 2016, it was already bad enough that the Vine team could not keep themselves together. But things went from bad to worse for Vine when Twitter announced its own native video feature. They announced it all the way back in late 2014. However, there's confusing information that relates to the fact that the video feature was released at the end of 2015, but the earliest I can find was 2014. Not a good sign if they're toying around with the idea this early. But as they updated their native video feature more and more, this would make Vine more irrelevant and confusing to where they fit in Twitter's video strategy, and would effectively make Vine more and more pointless in the long run. However, Twitter still had plans to try and at least make as much money off of Vine as possible. Twitter required Niche, a talent agency, to connect advertisers with popular content creators. This was to help build an establishment between Viners and brands as a way round the monetization problem.
Twitter has been aggressive recently, adding new features and making moves to attract new users. And this week, they just acquired Niche. Niche is an agency that links advertisers to social media stars. The move is clearly aimed at getting Twitter more revenue. There's no word on what Twitter's exact plans are. What's clear is you should expect some of your favorite social media stars in promo posts on your feed.
This was an attempt to win back the same Vine stars, brands and so on that flocked to the competition that had better monetization features. But as Instagram, Snapchat and Musical.ly were introducing bigger and better features, and while accumulating over millions of users, requiring Niche was too little too late, as the interest in Vine started to significantly drop. Throughout 2015, Twitter noticed that live streaming was getting more and more popular, especially with new and up-and-coming sites like Twitch. And Facebook, their main competitor, introduced their own live streaming service. But for argument's sake, we're just going to call it Facebook Live. And of course, Twitter noticed this was all going on and wanted their cut of the pie. So Twitter required a live streaming service named Periscope. A live streaming service that was on the rise, but never became the next big thing Twitter was looking for. Basically, they wanted their own Twitch, and had high expectations to blow up like Vine did. Vine had enough competition to deal with, but Twitter making these moves was squeezing the life out of Vine. As Twitter was introducing different video features, these buyouts would eventually come back to bite Twitter in the ass. As throughout 2015 and 2016, Twitter was losing money, paying the price of the buyouts they were making in an effort to adapt to the changing landscape of the internet, while their competition, Instagram, was reaping the rewards of the success of their own live streaming features. Same with the rest of their competition as they adapted much quicker. Twitter understands the fundamentals of being at the right place at the right time, as they witnessed Vine's explosion into popularity. But taking notes from their competition, speed is everything in this game. And we know this since Vine introduced a long-awaited feature too late, as they introduced it at the wrong place at the wrong time. Twitter had free video features, like why would you need free? That's just gonna cost more to run. And Vine was just becoming more deadweight than a benefit, when you could easily make the same type of content using Twitter's video feature, and it functions the same way on a phone. So with Twitter losing more and more profit, they had a very critical decision to make. Either find a way to make Vine work, or cut their losses with what they already bought out to save money. Obviously Periscope hasn't been cut, as people are still using the service today. And how can you get rid of your own video feature? So all that leaves is Vine. And as we've discussed the collection of problems already, the day of reckoning for Vine came to be. So in late 2016, the world received the shocking news that Vine was going to be shut down once and for good. So after the news of Vine's official shutdown, the shutdown wasn't like, oh, shut it down completely. It was more like a slow death, in the sense that they had a few gimmicks just to keep it going for like a couple of more years, like Vine Camera, which was basically Vine but manifested into Twitter instead of it being its own app.
Twitter is shutting the 6-second video service today, but it's not sort of completely dying out. What's happening to the company, Jeff?
Right, so they're kind of shifting what Vine currently is into a new Vine camera situation where you're still gonna get that 6-second video, but it's gonna be through Twitter and you'll post it directly to Twitter. But the legacy of your Vines will be gone forever unless you start downloading them. And I'm pretty sure that deadline is today. So if you ever did a bunch of Vines you're super proud of, download them. Download them now because they're going to be gone forever and no one will be able to see your 6 seconds of brilliance. So
that's how
it.
they're going to have to save them, by downloading them.
Right, it should take 5 seconds, so just do that.
Only 2 years later, they would actually shut down the app for good, once they finished squeezing as much out of Vine camera as they could. Needless to say, it served its purpose. The same thing goes for the archive. It's dead, but sort of not. I mean, if you go tunneling through a few websites, you'll eventually find an archived video on Vine, as I've shown throughout the video, but the website doesn't work like it used to. It's like a barren social media wasteland, you know, social media Rome. I think we can all agree that Vine is dead in the water, gone forever. And some people may be happy with that, other people want to reminisce and look back. But for anyone that was happy about Vine's shutdown, due to the people on it or content on it, we're in for a very rude awakening, especially on the YouTube scene, when the cringely dubbed but infamous Vine invasion happened, and it had such an impact that it made people think twice about hoping for another social media app to be shut down. Because if that happens again, they'll just migrate over to YouTube. So 4 years after Vine's shutdown, what happened to Vine's original co-founders? Well, 2 of them left early. But 2 years after the shutdown, Colin Kroll co-founded and designed an app with Ruz Yusupov named HQ Trivia, an interactive mobile app where you can win cash prizes. And then 1 year after HQ's release, in 2018, Colin Kroll unfortunately passed away from an overdose, leaving Yusupov to hold the app afloat once again, going through all kinds of trials and tribulations. In February of 2020, HQ Trivia shut down, making its 25 employees redundant after running out of money, which forced their primary investors to cut their funding, then made a comeback 2 months later, after an unspecified company purchased the franchise, and has been doing pretty well since then. As for Dom Hoffman, he went his own way doing his own thing, creating his own app which was supposed to be the successor to Vine named Byte, which came out in the beginning of 2020. This was to catch lightning in a bottle twice and appeal to the Vine nostalgics, and to use that to compete with the likes of TikTok, which is dominating the social media landscape right now, having learned from Vine's mistakes when TikTok was once Musical.ly. Vine launched at a time when TikTok didn't exist, this time with Vine's successor throwing its hat into the ring. Everything that Vine has innovated has now become the norm. Most apps now are using those same features and functions that gave Vine its name. And Byte hasn't even come close to what Vine accomplished. I'm not saying that Byte doesn't have a chance. I'm saying that times have changed since Vine was succeeding. And while some people may be attracted to Byte because it's attempting to capture the spirit of Vine, the truth is, it's not Vine. It wasn't the app that made Vine, it was the people and the memes on it that made Vine. And you can't exactly replicate something like that. Not to mention that most people have already moved on to TikTok, Instagram, and apps like them. But what will never change is no matter how much you may like or dislike Vine, the app's impact and legacy still lives on through all the other social medias. If Vine did everything right from the start, who knows what it could have accomplished? Maybe it might be sitting on TikTok's throne right about now. And the story of Vine fascinated me a bit, that's why I made a video about it. A cheesy way of putting it, I guess I did it for the Vine. You know what, the hell with it, can't resist.